All right, everybody. So I want to welcome Tristan DeYoung onto the podcast. And you guys have already heard a general intro about who he is and what he's all about. But Tristan, do you want to give a little bit of a general overview of just who you are?
Yeah, I'm sure you did pretty well. So basically, to sum up probably what you said, I started playing hockey when I was 10. Some would consider that a late bloomer. And basically, I am native to Cambridge, Ontario. I grew up playing in Cambridge and then eventually moved to Waterloo, Breslau area, but played for the Waterloo Wolves when I was 14 years old. And basically from there, I had a couple of years in Waterloo until I was drafted to the OHL. I ended up being drafted to the Barrie Colts and went to a couple of their camps along with my first years of junior, but nothing played out in terms of the OHL. So after my second year of junior, my first year was in Cambridge, second year was in St. Catharines. After the second year, I was scouted to the QMJHL in Moncton, New Brunswick. And honestly, before then, I never knew of Moncton or what city that was in New Brunswick. I'm geographically declined on a good day. So that was an experience that I ended up going to camp, cracking the roster as a free agent at 18. And from there, I had 3 awesome years of development, both on and off the ice, and learned lots, had lots of great coaches. Like I said, lots of professional development from those coaches. And yeah, we can get into that a bit more, but that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. And now I am looking forward to heading to University of Guelph next year. So I committed in the new year, and that'll be the next step for me.
Awesome. Well, you have a lot to talk about. You've done a lot of cool things, and I want to rewind back to the beginning because I know you mentioned that you started off at 10. Now, like for myself, I played at like 4 or 5, and I started super, super early. What was it that kind of led you to start like later on?
Well, basically, my parents let me choose. And I think that was a good idea. Maybe I could have got a little push a little earlier and I would have had a couple of years of development to add to it. But at that age anyway, when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, you just do it for fun. So basically my sister got into skating and I watched her start skating. And I got into skating as well, part of her figure skating program, but I was wearing hockey skates. And after a year or two of skating, I jumped right into the hockey side of things. I was a bigger dude compared to who I was playing with. So I just needed to work on my skating and on my hockey IQ for those first years. And once I got a hold of that, after 2 years of house league, I played right into AAA. I think that was coming into Pee Wee. And from Pee Wee to minor Bantam, I played in Cambridge. Had a lot of guys that I still keep up with today from Cambridge. Great experience. And when I moved to Breslau, I had the choice to pick between Waterloo and Guelph. And I've always heard of the Waterloo program as, it's renowned for its professionalism and its junior approach. So they do everything in a junior way to prepare kids that come through the program for the next level. And I was excited for that. I actually had a couple buddies that were on the team. So I was going in with familiar faces on my team. And basically from those 2 years, I played with Waterloo. I won 2 Alliance championships with the team I played on. I also was called up for a year with the team that was older than me and won an Alliance championship with them too. So those are some things that I'll never forget. There's still guys that I keep up with today that are, you shared that experience and they last a lifetime. So I'm not going to forget what happened there. And I'm sure that even 10 years, 20 years down the road, you can still have something to talk about with those guys. So it was a great group and I got a lot of experience. And I hope, or not that I hope, but I think that's what kind of got me a look into the OHL draft. And I was grateful for those years.
That's awesome. And like, so I know obviously winning in those situations is massive and like it really brings the team together. Everything's positive and it's just it feels so good to get to like be on that role with everybody. Like, was there anything you really picked up and learned from those years that you really took into junior and like that really made a big difference in who you were as a player?
Yeah. I mean, the team camaraderie, just being comfortable within a team is a big part of success. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody's prepared. A big thing that Waterloo had was they were prepared in terms of every game with video, something that not a lot of minor teams had back when I was playing. Maybe they do now, but video preparation, looking at other teams, looking at our own games. And from that, they would, pick out what the strengths and weaknesses are we needed to work on, we needed to take advantage of in terms of another team going into playoffs, going into each round. And that was a big thing that resonated in junior, was being a student of the game and learning from video feedback and using that to our advantage on the technical side of things to, work toward success. Because that's a big part of being prepared, is knowing your opponent and knowing your own, being self-aware about your own strengths and weaknesses. And video is one of the best ways that I learn as a visual learner. And that's what helped me. And that's what continued to happen into junior, because a big level of junior is learning from video and video feedback and watching film and being a student that learns from each one so that you can better yourself and better your team.
That's awesome. Okay, so as far as the approach to video, was there kind of a big difference when you went from kind of in minor hockey to the junior B teams and then into like major junior? What were some of the differences you noticed when in that specific area? What were the adjustments that got made through those levels?
In terms of the video itself, I noticed that the difference between major junior and a lower end junior or minor was just the programs they have. You could have a whole game and you have a specific program that even the NHL uses. And this program will cut your shifts so that you can access them an hour after the game. They'll filter out, your shots. They'll filter out your plays, your mistakes. So it's just kind of, instead of having a coach in minor or my first years of junior watch your shifts with you and point out, this is what we think, or this is what you should do. It was more of self-reliant or self-dependent responsibility that you can go to your shifts and watch them. And from there, you can start learning about yourself and critiquing your own individual habits. And they might align with the coach. It's going to be biased to what they want for the team and what they think is better for you in development. And, usually you agree with them. And being able to have that instant feedback is something that was different in minor. You kind of had to wait or schedule to see your shifts or work a little extra harder to see your shifts than you would in major junior.
Okay. And so there's a million directions I can go with these conversations. Yeah. And I just want to dig in a little bit more into the video stuff and kind of keep on that path for a second, because I think it's very interesting to see people's strategy, because it's very cliche for people and like coaches to say, hey, watch your video. Right. But what was kind of the tactics you used when you were actually looking at your video? Was it something that, first of all, were you doing it every single game right after the game? You were watching the clips and breaking it down? Were you waiting till the next day, the next week? What was the kind of strategy you did, let's say more into juniors when things got really serious, obviously?
So specifically this past year, the routine I had was after the game, because, you come out of a game and you have certain feelings about it. You might feel great about that game. You might feel low about that game, and you should let those emotions settle, take it in, and then the next day evaluate kind of how it is in a neutral perspective, so you don't feel any hate or any love specifically toward that game. You drop it the next day and you just evaluate from a technical and neutral perspective. And basically by doing that, the next day I could see, okay, this is what I was right. And before we take a step back, if you know your identity as a player and you know what specific role you want to encompass in your game, you start to identify strengths and weaknesses that you can work on and that you can apply to each game. So say I look at specific strengths that I own and I watch the film, I'll take note of, hey, I did that well. That's something I can apply and should apply to my future game. And then you have your weaknesses, like, okay, yeah, I realized this game was a little different than the last one because I took a couple extra crossovers to the middle when I should have kept stable, and that got me beat to the outside, something like that, right? And when you become self-aware of your identity and your strengths and weaknesses that apply to your identity, you can start to see yourself doing things right, and even see yourself correcting the things that you're doing wrong in a way that if you want to practice mentally preparing for a game, you can visualize yourself, hey, doing that play. You've seen it on video. You've seen yourself in the moment doing it. You can visualize yourself doing that right. And you can visualize your weaknesses being done in a way that you would rather have them, right? And I think that visualization side of things is a huge mental aspect that can be applied to any young player who's trying to gain confidence, going into the junior ranks, going into pro ranks, or any camps. And that's something I really emphasize that worked for me when I looked at video and would get feedback from it. And then before a game, I visualize what I saw. Sometimes I would look over specific things I wanted to work on that day, like the game day. Say maybe it's a power play or a certain breakout. I'd really hone in on that and take it all in going into the game.
Okay. Yeah. So on that day, when you on the game day, when you were looking at would you actually look at the clips and look at and see yourself doing them, do a visualization session, and when were you doing that? What was the actual tactics you were using?
Right. Okay. So after the game, like I said, the next day in the morning, I'd probably watch my full shifts. And then specifically, if I had something that I really wanted to bring into game day, specifically this past year, I was playing a lot more power play, and I was leading the first line power play at the end of the year. And that day we would have our meetings in the morning, and we'd have our power play meetings, we'd have our PK meetings. And so I'd get feedback and also encouragement for what we need to do and apply to that game. And it differs with an opponent, right? So I would take that home, have my pregame meal, have my nap. And in the mix of all of that, I would watch how I played on the power play against the opponent I'm playing that night. And then if there is something that I pick up on, I can correct it, or I can be aware of it going into that game, just so that when you're in that moment, you don't have to hesitate. You don't have to second guess yourself when you're doing something. You can be like, okay, I saw that. I saw this is what I need to do. It's backed by what the coaches want me to do. Play it simple, make this pass. This is the breakout we're doing. And it's just a part of being prepared that gives you confidence every time you step onto the ice. So
awesome. Well, yeah, I really like that. And it's cool to see what the little techniques and the strategy you use to put that stuff together, because I think as a younger player, or maybe somebody who doesn't have exposure to that high level, major, junior level, you don't necessarily know what can I be doing. And I think that a lot of players can actually be doing something very similar, but you just have to take it on yourself to create that system.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of it's just self-reliant and being disciplined to watching it and not doing it mindlessly, but trying to be engaged and get something out of it.
Right. Awesome. Well, so to take a more broad look at kind of your junior experience, what was it kind of like making that transition from, I guess, first of all, going into junior B, playing for Cambridge, St. Catharines, and then making that jump up to major junior, and kind of that journey? That's a really big question, but you can kind of approach it however you'd like.
I'll get kind of specific and talk about the jump from junior B to major junior. Junior B, especially in the GOJHL, I saw some news that they might be going junior A. I don't know if that's official yet, but I think they are up there with all the junior A tier 2 leagues, because you're playing with men, you're playing with guys that are already 19, 20 years old, and it's a concentrated league because you don't have a limit, right? That could be different now, but basically I was playing those first 2 years in junior B was more getting the strength. I needed to play with bigger boys and the confidence I needed to play with bigger boys. When I jumped to major junior, it was about the speed. It was about the speed of not only playing the game, but making decisions. So the 2 seconds you might have where it gets caught in junior B, you only have 1 second or half a second to make that same decision in major junior. And from there, you have to rely a lot on your instincts. And that comes down to how prepared you are and how in tune you are with your identity and what kind of plays you make. You know, it's not going to be plays that you make between your legs, which I've definitely tried before, not my identity. But it's going to be more plays that are simple. It's, you know, if you need to get off the glass, you get off the glass. If you need to make that first pass rather than deking someone and doing it, it's about doing that. So I think the speed of the game and the speed of making decisions was the biggest jump that I had to adapt to.
Got it. Yeah, that is something I've definitely heard for a lot of players. It's not necessarily guys are a million times better, but it is that if things happen so much quicker that you can, if you aren't able to make that adjustment right away, it's all right, you're going right back.
Yeah, and you'll soon catch up because eventually, if you do take too long to make that decision, there are good enough players that they're going to make you pay for it every single time, right?
Right.
So you don't get caught off the hook too much.
Right. Well, what were with that, obviously it creates a place where it's a lot easier to make mistakes and those mistakes are more costly. Like, what were some of the more difficult things you had to deal with as you kind of made that jump? Like in terms of maybe having off games, having difficult situations to deal with, like you can touch on it in any way you want there, but what were some experiences you had?
If I were to think, the biggest step would just be being finding my role, which is something I worked on in junior B, but being able to apply that to a team that had a lot of depth, that had a lot of skill, and making sure that I'm not playing out of the player I'm trying to be or the player that a coach sees me fit within their system. Because you know, it doesn't matter if you're a fifth, sixth defenseman, if you're a fourth line guy, if you know your role and you play to your role, it's eventually going to help you increase in the ranks. And something that I got out of my coaches, specifically in the last year and the last 2 years, was, you know, what you see players, they go to the AHL, they go to the NHL, and some players think nothing of them. They're like, how are these guys going to this level? Like when they played with me, they weren't anything flashy. They weren't a supercar. And basically, how you want to think of it is if you can be reliable and your coach can trust you that you can play your role, maybe you are a supercar, but if you stick to playing that role and not trying to overdo it by throwing big hits or being a fighter, then you can exceed at the next level, knowing that you're going to start on a fourth or a third line. You're not going to go right to the top if you're making the NHL. If you're making the ECHL, you're going to have to work your way up. So if you can be reliable as a sixth or fifth defenseman, and also as a first or a second defenseman, and bring the same attributes every single time, it's going to ultimately help your success. And taking the mental part of that and not having a wavering confidence depending on where you are in the lineup. So being like, hey, I'm confident that I'm going to do the same thing as a third line guy and as a first line guy. It's going to help you because ultimately you bring the same thing to the table no matter where you are in the lineup. And that's what your coach is going to want to trust and rely on when you play your games.
That's awesome. That will be extremely helpful for a lot of players to hear, because it's I think juniors is a lot of players experience kind of the roller coaster of they have a couple good games and they're at the top of the world and things are amazing, and then you hit that point where all of a sudden it's like one bad game and you just slide back down again.
Right. And yeah, and to touch on that point, I think part of knowing your strengths and knowing what you bring to each game, if you're in a slump and nothing's going right for you, and you have that anxiety, maybe you're overwhelmed and you start seeing yourself slipping. If you can reset and come back to that state and become self-aware to, hey, this is what I need to work on. This is what I'm doing that's out of what I usually do. It doesn't matter if the points are coming. It doesn't matter how much ice I'm playing. If I can just bring it and focus on each individual shift, it should help you in the long run to keep consistent, because consistency is one of the biggest things in life and in hockey.
That's great. And so you may have already highlighted what you may answer here, but is there some kind of advice that you would really want to offer your past self? Kind of, let's say you're going into your first year as a junior. Is there something that you would say, or even like a couple things that you would really highlight and want to kind of push and say, like, this is what you need to focus on moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I wish I could have incorporated when I was younger, but it's part of growing up and it's part of learning. The biggest thing would have just been keeping my confidence. And I had years where there were wavering confidence within my games, and sometimes I'd be engaged, sometimes I wouldn't, and I was conflicted because I was naive to what was really happening, and how I could help that on a mental aspect or on a physical aspect, right? So the biggest thing I tell myself is, know your role, play to your role, and bring confidence and bring energy. Because I think the biggest step coming into, say you're a rookie coming into a new team or a new league, the worst thing you could do is just sit back and watch and be shy and let other people take your opportunities, not in necessarily that competitive of a way, but in the fact where you can get out of your comfort zone. And that's a big thing that I would have told my younger self is, don't be comfortable. This life is going to be hard, whether you take the easy route or the hard route. Eventually, if you take the easy route, it's going to catch up to you, because you're going to regret not taking the hard decisions, or being someone that's energetic in the room, or introducing yourself to people, saying that thing you want to say but you're scared might not get taken well, something like that, or just putting in the extra work. I think making your life hard makes it easier in the long run, because eventually those hard decisions, when it becomes a habit, when it becomes a routine, will become easy to you, and it will be so much better than just taking what was comfortable and staying in your comfort zone and not getting anything out of it.
Right. And I think there's a quote that I really like. I think it's from a guy named Jocko Willink, and he says this idea of like disciplined equals freedom. And
Right.
I know you brought up the idea of discipline being one of kind of the pillars of what's made you successful so far and what will continue to. And like the idea behind that quote is really being disciplined, being able to put in that time, having a structure and following it is what allows you to say, hey, like, now I can relax for the next 3 hours because I've done what I needed to do. And
Right.
So, I mean, what does discipline mean for you, and how did you apply it throughout your career? And what are maybe some tips you would give players to improve discipline, or strategies to use?
Right. Well, this can go in so many different directions, but if we talk about discipline in my life, I really honed in on discipline this past New Year, and basically I was doing things that were productive to my development as a person and as a player, but there were still habits that I knew I wanted to shake, but I was too comfortable to just staying and doing it, because I thought it was bringing me joy, but it was just making me numb to the conflict I was facing of not doing the right things, basically. So the first part of discipline, I think, is having a routine and having a set routine that you can stick to, something that you believe in. I'm big on having beliefs and something that powers why you're doing something. So you need to understand your why before you can commit yourself to a future goal. You could be goal oriented. I think that's right. Yeah. But if you don't have a purpose, along the journey, it's not going to mean anything in the long run. So first of all, I would tell young players, figure out your why. Why are you doing this? Why do you play hockey every day? It's not just nothing. You're doing it for a reason. Basically, if you find your purpose and you ask yourself a bunch of times why, and get into detail with that too. It can't just be because I love the game. It has to be like you love the game, you want to do this for the rest of your life at something that you can get paid and you're passionate about doing. You know what the sacrifices have to be made. You want to pay back your family. You want to prove people wrong, or you want to prove your support is right. If you get into detail about your why and your purpose, you can start to prepare a plan that becomes into a routine. My biggest thing, something that I apply to my own life, is my morning routine. I think right now it's pretty bulletproof because I've been doing it for this specific routine. I've been doing it for 6 months now. And, there's been days where I have setbacks and, maybe I forget to do something. Maybe I just don't feel like it. And I catch myself because I don't like being comfortable with not bettering myself in the future. So basically a morning routine and one that you have in words that means something to you. So first, your why. First, your purpose. So you know why you're getting up early. You know why you're putting in the work early. And when you can't rely on yourself to keep you accountable, like for those actions, you have someone that's counting on you to put in that work. It might be a date that you're reaching, say it's a training camp, or it's a goal, or it's a certain level you want to achieve that's attainable and measurable. But if you don't have that purpose, then you can't stick to a routine. And I actually heard a great quote. And part of my morning routine is when I'm working out, I like to listen to powerful people talk. So there'll be, motivational speakers. There's so many compilations on YouTube right now of motivational speakers, and they're all past neuroscientists. They all have stories to tell, and you can learn from them subconsciously, getting it ingrained into your system while you're working out. And that's one thing I didn't notice was having such an effect on me. But I'm listening to these people, and one person said, I think it was 2 days ago, they said basically putting work into something without a purpose is just stress. If you get up every day and you don't know why you're going to work and it's just to get a paycheck at the end of the week, it's just stress. But as soon as you put in work that has a purpose, it becomes a passion, because you know why you're getting up in the morning, you know why you're excited to do that. And you're going to have those rough patches. You're going to have days where you don't want to get up, but you tell yourself, hey, this is my purpose. This is why I'm doing it. And you get to it. So with that, I think having a morning routine, it doesn't have to be, the exact same thing every morning. But if you have something that's bettering yourself, I like to think that in the morning, if you have something that practices gratefulness, reflection, physical stress, and mental clarity, it just puts yourself into a powerful mindset for the rest of your day. And you do that every day, eventually you're going to be in a powerful mindset for the rest of your life. So if you can practice gratitude, wake up and tell yourself or write down something you're grateful for, or a couple things you're grateful for, all of a sudden you change your perspective on life, and you're not looking at things in a negative way. You're not complaining as much about things that are out of your control. Second, you put yourself into a physical state. All of a sudden your metabolic rate is up for the day. Your stress and hormones are intact to take on anything you want in the day, because you just push yourself to the max. Okay, if you do some cardio, if you do reps in the gym, you just push yourself to the max. It's like I got the confidence that I could take on whatever has to be done today, because that was the hardest part of my day. And then on top of that, if you practice, let's say something like meditation, manifestation, you're just compounding the effects and the habits that are going to generate success for you. So you know what you want going into a day. You have your goals written down. You have your goals written down for the month, for the week, or whatever in general. And those all compound like to an unbelievable extent in terms of your happiness and your mental clarity.
Awesome. Okay. So there's a lot to go off of there. And
Yeah.
what I want to get into is some of the more specific parts of what you just said, and get an idea of what it is that you are doing, the details of what you're doing. So maybe people have a bit of a framework to build off of, because I really like the principles you have, and they make a lot of sense, that having that why, putting the pieces together of your morning routine.
Great.
So I guess let's start off on, in terms of your goal setting. So you mentioned that at the end, and I think that's probably a good place to look at for a lot of people, because no matter what you're doing, whether it's you're trying to succeed in hockey, whether it's you're trying to succeed after you've completed your career, or some other aspect. So what are you doing to kind of put together your goals and set out your plan? So is it kind of you plan out your year and then plan out the goals for the month, the week, and then plan day to day? What's your strategy there?
So see, there's a couple gray areas with this. So basically, you can set a goal. I can set that I want to be in the NHL by a certain date, or I want to be a pro by this date, or I want to lose this much weight. And some things that can get confusing with goals is people set goals and then they don't take the action. They think it's just enough to set that goal, and they don't actually change what's happening in their life to get to that goal. So basically, when I was in Moncton, I had certain goals written into short-term and long-term. I would think of long-term anywhere from 6 months on, and short-term is a week to a month kind of thing, anything in between there. So I had those goals set, and I had the routines I wanted to hit every day, what I wanted to complete every day. And eventually, once you keep doing that on a daily basis, which are in line with your purpose, in line with what you want in your goals, it becomes a habit, and habits are hard to break. Bad habits are hard to break, but once you get a good habit going, it's hard to break as well, because eventually you miss one of the things that you usually do every day, your body's naturally going to tell you, or your mind's naturally going to pick it up. You might be just working everyday life and you're like, damn, I forgot to meditate this morning. I forgot to practice this that I usually do. And then you'll try to get it done that day, so you don't have to regret, your past self beating you, or your future self looking back and saying you should have done it, kind of thing. Where were we going with that? In terms of goals, I like to have goals, specific goals that, can be measurable but are important to me. And then I think that's more important than the goals is being action oriented. So you can have a goal for each day, and you might get up in the morning and have no desire to do what you want to do. So if you just say, hey, my goal is to start that and take that action to start something that might start it out as, hey, I want to take a 5-mile run, but you get up and you're like, there's no way I'm running 5 miles a day. It's raining. There's people that need me to go back to bed, and I just feel more comfortable staying inside. Basically, just by becoming action oriented and starting, say, hey, I just want to get 1 mile in, or a couple steps in. Once you get that 1 mile in, you're going to want to get to that 5 mile, because eventually you get over that slump. You make yourself uncomfortable. And once you're out of that comfort, you're like, yeah, I can do this. And you start believing in yourself. And after that, there's nothing more fulfilling than reaching that, and maxing out to that goal and having it as a habit, as part of every day, because you feel fulfilled after doing it over and over and over again. And it leads into your life. Like, you can have so many aspects of your life that are affected just by sticking to goals. I don't want to ramble on too long here, but basically a big part, like in the morning, if you can detach social media, if you can detach its snooze button, the worst thing you can do is snooze in the morning, because that tells yourself, hey, we're going to keep comfortable and we're going to cheat ourselves by going back to bed for just 5 or 10 more minutes, which doesn't mean anything to your sleep cycles or your deep sleep. But just by hitting the snooze button, you're telling yourself that you're allowed to let yourself off the hook for the rest of the day, kind of thing. getting on your phone before getting into a powerful state and letting the phone and the media change your perspective on the day, rather than putting yourself and having self-control to put yourself into that own powerful state and then taking on media and then taking on the rest of the day. It's just a couple little things that go a long way, in my opinion.
Awesome. So is there, so again, there's always so many different directions to go off of that stuff.
We're gonna need a part 2, I think.
I think we're gonna have to. But for, I guess, understanding that, again, I like to try to go to the specifics and what people are actually doing, because it's obviously very helpful to have the principles and push people in the right direction. But so in terms of, let's look at like exactly what you do for your morning routine. What exactly are you doing? And let's get a crystal clear understanding of that, so that I think a player could jump right off this podcast and say, okay, this is what I'm implementing tomorrow.
I mean, it's different to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So what works for me might not work for someone. And the same said that the things that I'm doing in the morning were built up over time. So I might have had one part of it be integrated in the first month, and then the second part, and then I was building up over time. If you jump right into it, I think it's going to be kind of hard to keep that routine. But as long as you're taking little gains from doing something different, and one thing that my coach I had last year, Dan LaCroix, really emphasized was the growth mindset, and growing every single day, because as soon as you grow every single day, it compounds into something great at the end, right? So if you can up yourself 1% every single day, don't add an extra 10 kilometers every single day. Maybe, add an extra 100 meters, or do something that's out of what you usually do, like journal, or drink a couple glasses of water right when you get up, or don't touch your phone. That's a big thing. Don't touch your phone. Use it for whatever you need with music and stuff, but don't get on it for the first hour of your day. Basically what I do is I get up. I usually like to be up before the sunset or sunrise. Sunset would be kind of early, but if I wake up before sunrise, I found my body's adapted to that, so that when the sun does rise, I usually can get up on my own. But I still need my alarm. And some days I fail. Some days I sleep in, and I don't like to call it failure. I like to call it learning. And I'll just tell myself the next day it's gonna be better. So I like to put my phone across the room, so I actually have to get up, turn it off. That'll be around 5:30. I drink a glass or two of water with creatine. Right now I'm on a loading phase. So after that, I'll journal, and I'll write 3 things that I'm grateful for in my life or for that day. And I'll go really specific into it. So it won't just be like, I'm glad, I'm happy. It'll be, I'm glad that the intricacies of my body work the way they are, so I can lead a healthy lifestyle, or I can do my workouts, kind of thing, right? After that, I'll give myself probably 15 minutes to get downstairs. I'll do some cardio. So my first thing I try to do Monday to Saturday, and then Sundays, I'm working on kind of getting into my Sundays, but I like to use my Sundays as a more of active recovery. And it gives me that extra jump to get into Monday again, which has been working. So as long as it doesn't lead into the rest of my week, I'm okay giving the Sunday as an active recovery day. And I'll run 2.5K to 3K every morning. And then after that, I'll get right into my workout. I do this all fasted, and I've found that it's better for me to do it fasted, specifically because when I do eat, it either just doesn't settle in time, or my stomach just doesn't react well when I eat in the morning. And I don't have cardio or anything done before that. And then after that, I'll do my workout. Like I said, it'll be specific to what that day is, either working on legs or arms, or a bit of both with core integrated, maybe a specific hockey skill I want to work on that day. And then after my workout, I will stretch, I'll meditate, and some days I'll shoot pucks. I'm kind of working on a space in my basement to clear out clutter to get more puck shot, or I'll go to the park that's not too far from here to do it. So I'll be part of it. And after that, it's just whatever else happens. I'll make breakfast. I usually eat the same thing every morning, and I haven't got sick of it, which is great. And after breakfast, I just take on the rest of my day. I'll have meetings like we're doing right now scheduled. Maybe I'll have a job, but basically if you do the same thing early enough every single morning, you can cut it down in length to maybe just an hour. But some people are okay with just sleeping in and getting up 30 minutes before they have to go to work, 30 minutes before they do anything. And one thing I learned, because I was that person almost 6 months to a year ago, right? But just getting that extra hour, first of all, that extra hour of sleep beforehand and that extra hour in the morning gets you in such a powerful state, because you tackle the worst part of your day right off the bat, and you get what you want done. And then basically, like from there, you can do what you want. So I was working construction, and I was starting at like 8, and I would have to get up even earlier, like 5, to get this done. And it'd be more of a shortened thing, but I would still get it done. I'd still feel good about doing it. Now, I'm not working construction anymore. I have a part-time gig as a shooting instructor. So I have a lot of days where I don't have to get up that early because I'm not working. Like, I could sleep in if I wanted to, but I like to get it done in the morning. And then the rest of the day, I can work toward what I'm doing now, connecting with people, networking. And if I do have to work, I'll work that day too.
Awesome. All right. So there are a million more questions I want to ask. So we are definitely doing a part 2. But what I wanted to touch on for the last little bit is what you're currently kind of moving into in the future in terms of, let's say, first of all, like your hockey career, and then let's talk a little bit about the different coaching things you're looking to do, because I know we're on kind of similar paths in the sense of kind of doing development for players and helping people improve their lives in kind of all areas. So what's kind of the direction you're headed?
So like I said, I'm going to the University of Guelph for the fall. I'm going to be taking human kinetics while I'm there, and eventually that's a degree I'd like to get. It's relative to what I'm doing now, and it's relative to everything I've learned in the past. And I had a change of mind with that recently. I was actually studying for engineering when I was in Moncton, and it just wasn't something I was passionate about anymore. It was something I was probably just saying because it sounded cool. So once I changed and figured out that I was doing something I liked, something that gets me excited to network with people and help them in a physical, mental, and even financial state, this is something I'd like to continue into my future. So all of a sudden, my paths were wired into what I like doing. I'll be playing hockey. I'll be learning about something I like to learn about. I'd like to learn a little neuro too, with psychology and neuroscience. So after that, we'll see where the university brings me. The goal is to still play professional hockey and play in the NHL. And I know I'm a little old to be saying that, but I always think of myself, and I tell myself, I've learned so much and I've changed a lot in the past. There's no reason why the habits I'm doing or the work I'm putting in is any different than a professional hockey player. And basically, as of right now, I just got to act like I'm playing university, and I'm just waiting to be called up, right? So there's so many paths now with the university, with just so many paths in general that get you to the professional side of things. So if you keep working, you keep sticking to your goals, eventually, if you don't let anyone tell you to stop, you're going to get there on your own, right? So I'd like to play pro, and then whether that takes me however many years down the road, or maybe it's done in a few, I'd like to keep this on the side. And basically what I'm doing right now that I've had a little extra time to focus on it, because I'm only working part-time, is I'd like to create wellness programs for individuals. It can be hockey players. It could just be someone who's looking for a different fitness regime, or someone who has conflict in their life that would like to work on some different some different methods that can achieve mental clarity. I also like money. I like learning about money. It's something that came up recently, but I can give some not financial advice. I can't give financial advice because that's not my role, but I can kind of give people in the right direction and give them an education on some things I've learned financially that I think is beneficial to my future. So I offer wellness programs, training programs, clarity and mindset, and financial education. And that's the 3 areas I'm focusing on right now, and the 3 areas I'm passionate about. So if there's anybody that has that conflict, maybe they just need someone that holds them accountable. I can be their accountability buddy. And right now I'm basically networking myself over media to try to get people that just need someone there to keep them accountable, especially in the day of COVID, where habits are broken and it's hard to have that motivation and get out of bed. And I understand, and I can't even fathom what some people are facing right now, right? And I'm grateful to have it the way I have it, but maybe I can give somebody that extra motivation, or just somewhere to start, just a program to start. I'm offering free consults to anyone who needs or feels like they could use that advice. And basically that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to network on media, and I'm going to work on programs with people. And hopefully, it's the end goal. I think people get a lot of helping other people, especially within themselves. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to help. So
it's awesome. It sounds like the key that you found is you want to really help people get the most out of life. And it's such a big thing. And I know that it's very easy to become clouded by, like, got to have a bunch of clients, got to make a bunch of money, got to do this and that. But I think coming from that mindset of, I just want to give people what they want and allow them to, whether it's the accountability, which I think is something that goes extremely unnoticed when it comes to performance, whether it's having like a plan, it's awesome. So in terms of the accountability thing, because I think that's something that it's like very simple and people can kind of just like pass by that and not think anything of it. But like, what is it that stands out for you with the idea of accountability, and what that can bring for someone, and what you would do to actually implement accountability into someone's life?
Right. Well, specifically on my end, part of these programs would be like checkups, let's say weekly. I already have a couple clients that are appreciating just having someone there to, one, gauge their progress, or two, just ask questions. And I'm not always going to be right. I'm still learning. I'm a university student, but I've listened to a lot of people, and I've gained a lot of information from people who do know their stuff. And on any level, I can try to help, and when I can't, I'm going to try to direct people in the right way where they can. So I think part of being accountable to yourself and having someone that can hold you accountable is what builds a bulletproof routine, and builds discipline within a person to take advantage of every day and their everyday life, so that eventually, they can look through life in the perspective, maybe it's not going well for an individual, or maybe it's not going well in the world. There's a lot of things that are out of control that you can't really stress over. And it's just about kind of gaining that perspective that you can look at life differently and take the gains out of it, especially in today's world. And I just want to be there to kind of, like you said, keep people accountable, because I think that's the biggest part of building a routine and changing the way you look at the world.
That's great. Yeah. So we'll definitely leave like the links to get in contact with you to create that connection, and people who are interested can reach out. But
Sure.
yeah, so I think we covered a lot, and I think that there is a lot of stuff we can go into a lot more detail in terms of kind of like leadership things you've learned, in terms of understanding more of the different mindsets and approaches, some of the different techniques that you use for whether it's training, whether it's the mental side. I don't want to go too crazy into that because I think we could turn it
Yeah,
into another hour plus conversation.
for
So,
sure.
are there any other comments you want to leave people with? Any other actionable steps before we kind of step off here? And yeah, then we can have that round two at some point soon.
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot. It felt just more like a conversation. I just want to thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and I hope I can help whoever's listening, and give, even if they don't reach out to me or you, maybe they just gain a little insight, or that little spark they need to change the way they're living. And if the way they're living is great, then good on them, because the more powerful people we have in the world, the better the world's going to be, right? So once again, I just appreciate it, and yeah, I look forward to the next time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. And I'm sure people will get a ton out of this. So we will see you
Yeah,
soon.
sounds good.